A defining characteristic of modern life is a sense of overload. Too much paperwork, too many emails, too many television channels and distractions on the internet. It can sometimes feel like you've never done enough, and you can end up with a constant nagging sense of restlessness and even guilt that whatever you're doing right now, there's something else that you could be doing, or even that you should be doing instead. This irksome sense of overwhelm and guilt can actually seriously reduce your effectiveness. It can physically and mentally exhaust you. It takes an astonishing amount of energy to keep ignoring the long list of things in your mind that you feel you should be doing, or the clutter before your very eyes of stuff you need to sort out, not to mention the ever-growing queue of unanswered emails that you must attend to. The effort of putting it out of your mind and trying to ignore it so that you can get on with the task before you slowly saps your energy and focus over time. It's like a computer that has so many programs open and running in the background that the internal processor struggles to cope. And doing even the simplest things becomes sluggish and frustratingly slow. This is why decluttering the house can feel so energizing. Suddenly, all the junk that you had a nagging sense you should be dealing with is gone. And it's like that dealing with junk program in your mind can finally close. Now you have more attention and processing power to attend to the rest of your life. There are hundreds of systems for becoming more productive out there, but at the heart of them all are a few simple, common principles. Number 1. Break your big goals down into small, measurable actions. The more specific, the better. The brain does not respond well to vague ideas or overly large goals like write a novel or get fit. You need to give yourself specific goals for each day based on concrete actions that you can realistically accomplish that day, like write 2,000 words of my novel and do 30 lengths at the swimming pool. In other words, take the time to write a realistic action-based to-do list for each day. Number 2, be ruthless in decluttering your daily schedule. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Working Week, is a brilliant exemplar of this skill. He describes how he drastically cut the time he spent reading newspapers and answering email by limiting these activities to a specific time slot once a week. People sending him email received an auto-reply telling them he would answer them on Friday. He also points out how cheap it can be to hire a remote personal assistant over the internet to whom you can delegate much of your admin work. Now, of course, you don't need to copy Tim Ferriss exactly, but it is important to ask yourself how often you really need to read the news, how often you really need to check your text messages and emails, and whether your time could be much better spent by decluttering your day from some of the more repetitive, unproductive things you've been doing. Number 3, make sure your workspace or living space is conducive to getting things done. Much as we humans like to think of ourselves as rational beings, we are still very much driven by primal, instinctive processes in our brains. If everything's a mess and the materials you need for a task are all over the place, you can sometimes put off doing it for days or weeks, simply because it seems like too much effort to get started, and the brain finds it difficult to get motivated to do it. It's like you still have your cave-dwelling ancestor inside you who needs tasks to be as straightforward as possible in order to begin. When that ancestral self sees the tools in front of them and the materials arranged clearly, your instinctive brain pattern matches to this situation and says, "Aha, time to work," and releases the appropriate neurochemicals like dopamine to get you fired up and ready to go. When everything's in a mess and you have vague thoughts that you should go and find the materials you need, the cave dweller inside you gets a bit confused and thinks that having some food would be a much simpler choice, and you end up putting off the task endlessly. It might seem like a funny idea, but it can be very effective to think about planning your environment to make things as user-friendly as possible for your inner prehistoric self.